The colonel and one of his sons are both dead. What sort of message is the nature of their demise sending out about the NTC's control over its troops and indeed its reputation?
There's nothing new to this. Everyone has known since the inception of this NATO-inspired and facilitated uprising that the rebel factions are a motley crew of people whose only basis for working together is the overthrow of Gaddafi's regime. There's nothing new to this. I mean, one thing that the media is not talking on, if you look closely at the videos, I've seen two videos of the lynching of Muammar Gaddafi, and in both videos, in one of which you see a tied-up black Libyan or black man in the back of a pickup truck, just meters away from Gaddafi being lynched. In another video, there's a strange picture of another tied-up black black man, on a pickup truck of the pro-NATO rebels, tied on vertical poles, being paraded around the city. So here we have Muammar Gaddafi, who fought to the last in his hometown where he was born in a tent with these black brothers. I mean, so where is the Black Liberation Army? Where is the army in Africa that can save these dark-skinned people in Libya and the other people resisting NATO? So these rebel factions have always been white supremacist Arabs in alliance with white supremacist NATO as well. And the message they're trying to send out with this lynching of Muammar Gaddafi, and your piece was absolutely right, they wouldn't actually ever show anything similar in relation to white people or the soldiers of NATO. So the message is...
Let me just ask you, though, clearly we've seen many celebrating the victory of the fall of the Gaddafi regime and his death. And we've seen, of course, many people risking their own lives for a cause, for that change in regime. Are you actually saying, then, that this wasn't people-driven at all, and that these people were prepared to risk their lives just for NATO and for Western interests?
When you're a revolutionary leader of the global south, you incur enemies. When you nationalize your oil, when you redistribute your wealth, when you build your country up to be the country with the highest living standards in Africa, inevitably, those forces which are against that development, internally and internationally, will oppose you. And so these rebel factions have always been in alliance with the European powers against Gaddafi. This changed in the last 6 or 7 years when Libya had a rapprochement with the West, and also in the reform program. See, all these rebel factions, all of them were receiving money from Gaddafi in the reform process in the last 6-7 years. I can name you names of the NTC leadership that was receiving money that weren't part of the Jamahiriya regime, that weren't part of the political coloration of Gaddafi. And your reporter herself, Mrs. Fanoshna, reported from Tripoli that no one dare say anything that isn't pro-NATO or pro-rebel. If you criticize at all NATO, let alone show sympathy with Gaddafi, you will be threatened with imprisonment or worse. And just last week we had an uprising in Tripoli where pro-Gaddafi or anti-NATO people came out in the poorest district in Tripoli, and a firefight ensued. So whereas you're right that this is a civil war inspired by NATO, you can't say that everyone is supporting what's happened.
We've got to finish, but just very briefly, should Gaddafi have faced trial in Libya or indeed The Hague rather than meet the demise that we've seen? Just very briefly, did he deserve a fair trial?
Gaddafi, what happened to Gaddafi is what Gaddafi wanted. Gaddafi is an animal which wants to fight in the trenches against neo-colonialism and against NATO. So he died as he wanted. A martyr, as Chavez says, one of the greatest martyrs.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Sukant Chandan, joining us live there in London.